This phone is an artifact and a reminder that should you decide to take on Android and iOS, even in an already niche market, you might wind up with nothing at all. No, it doesn't run Android. Yes, it does have a physical keyboard with a touchpad built into it. And why the heck is it so wide? Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and I'm sure that in the eyes of at least someone at the company, well, they truly believed that this was a good idea. Though it's clear to see now, something like this was never really going to work, was it? These phones might be slightly older, but they still have creature comforts like eSIM support, and if, well, you're not like me and you actually do go outside your house, then you'll know just how much of a headache it is when you reach your destination country and there's no Wi-Fi around and you have absolutely no idea where you are. The easy fix for this is simply to install the Sally app before you leave, and once you're actually there, you can pick between many affordable eSIM plans that cover over 200 different destinations across 8 regions. With a Sally eSIM, you always have a connection when you need one, not only handy for posting those holiday snaps on the go, but using maps and actually knowing where you're going. No needs to queue in an airport for a travel sim or get ripped off trying to get one in a panic. It's all here on the app, and with 24/7 chat support and a full refund service on the off chance that your eSIM doesn't work, Sally takes all of the guesswork and headache away from travel internet. Check out the app on the Google Play Store or Apple App Store and use my code Ryan Thomas in the checkout section seen on screen in the description and the pinned comment for 15% off all packages, and a big thanks to Sally for sponsoring today's content. What about if you made your phone wider with a keyboard, a headphone port, a totally square 4.5-inch IPS display? Well, you'd get the BlackBerry Passport, a name that I'm sure requires no elaboration. I always say it in these videos, but what an utterly fascinating piece of tech history this is. By the way guys, it would be great if you could hit that like and subscribe button, really trying to hit 150k by the end of the year. Cheers. Picture this, it's 2014, you're a working professional with a need for a pocket PC, and you have the likes of Samsung's hot Galaxy Note 3 with its S Pen, LG's massive G Flex and G3, and Apple's iPhone 5S in your sights for a device. The Lumia 1520 is still a valid option, with Windows Mobile seemingly just not hitting its endpoint at this stage. And then in comes a slightly weakened but still legendary BlackBerry name to stir the pot with its unique form factor and physical keyboard with the Passport, at a time when touch keyboards weren't what they are today, with excellent palm rejection and autocorrect. Michael Fisher aside, the world had largely accepted typing with thumbs on glass. And that wasn't absolutely nailed on back in 2014, there was still scope for something like this. The Passport runs BlackBerry's own software dubbed BBOS, and to be honest, it's actually pretty cool all things considered. You can immediately tell that this was built for productivity in mind. Some quick searching reveals that people loved BlackBerry's email client, which given BBM's historic praise certainly comes as no surprise. For those of you who aren't aware, when I was a teenager, BBM was a thing, and I guess it's what Instagram or Blue Bubbles are these days. Everyone was on it, and if you weren't on it, you weren't cool. Really aging myself there. Funnily enough, given it's a now 11-year-old phone, the software leaned on gestures for navigation, which are quite intuitive, and of course now every phone that you seem to pick up uses gestures. Swiping over from the home screen gives you the BlackBerry Hub, where all the notifications live, almost like we now have when you swipe down from the top. It's actually quite interesting given that we have all of that in the shade these days, but this was all part of the home screen on the BlackBerry Passport. And the square form factor also makes heaps of sense, the same way that we prefer slightly squarer displays on laptops these days, with a lot of laptops coming with 16:10 instead of 16:9 aspect ratios. It just sort of allows you to see a bit more of what's going on, and I'm sure there's science behind it, but it just feels like you have a better view of things when you have a slightly closer to square aspect ratio. Well, this thing, it's totally square. This phone is as stout as you could possibly imagine. Take your actual Passport out and hold it, and that is the size of the BlackBerry Passport. Here it is next to some Galaxy Ultras, iPhone Pro Maxes and Pixel XLs, the largest phones around today. And here it is next to the iPhone mini just for some fun. It's a wide boy. Props if you can actually type on this thing one-handed, because Many reviewers sure couldn't, and that alongside a whole host of other annoyances resulted in generally kind of mixed reviews for the Passport. It's pretty hard to fit in pockets, are harder to use with small mitts, and I'm not sure if you've noticed this yet, but the keyboard isn't quite right. It's ortholinear, meaning that there's no offset between the rows, it's like a grid compared to your normal keyboard. And the spacebar is pushed right up into that bottom row, which pushes that bottom row left and right, which means it takes quite some getting used to when you actually try to type on it. And I found an article online where the writer wrote the whole review with this thing. And well, fair play to them, because I'm not sure I'd ever want to do that. It's one of those things where I'm sure you would get used to it after a few hours, tens, hundreds of hours. But for a normie, it's just very jarring out of the box. The keyboard is touch sensitive though, so you can actually use it to scroll around and swipe around the interface, particularly in web pages and landscape. I bought this example for about £100 on eBay. It does not last very long on a charge anymore whatsoever, which is a bit of a shame to be honest, because it's not a replaceable battery, or not meant to be at the very least. It is generally in quite good condition. I mean, there aren't any real major scuffs on it. It doesn't feel like there's any major chunks taken out of it. And actually, the previous owner left the screen protector on, which is really quite cool. But there's a rubbery texture to the back, and it has started to perish from what I can tell. And it's a bit of a grippy, sticky mess on the back here. It happens with lots of older phones that have sort of rubber backs to them. Makes it kind of hard to clean, but I can imagine when this was new, it was helping you hold this massively girthy phone. And we actually have to talk about the display for a second on the other side of the phone. Sure, it's an IPS, it's not an OLED, which to be honest probably helps it these days, with burn-in being a factor for older OLEDs. But at 1440 by 1440, it is incredibly sharp. I mean, for a phone that's over 10 years old, this is a tremendous display. And you know what, it actually gets surprisingly bright as well, though it doesn't hold a candle to what modern smartphones can do these days. Just a very, very cool display if you ask me. But everything you do on it, as is likely the case due to the Snapdragon 801 and 3GB of RAM, is just incredibly slow. Powering it on from sleep, opening the camera, taking a picture. Once it's all up and running, it actually seems to liven up a little bit, but it takes a minute to wake up and go through the gears, which is quite interesting because none of this is really mechanical. And I'm not sure what that's entirely down to, though I'm sure those specs probably do play a factor. You might have noticed that there's an extra button on the right, because the lock and power button is actually on the top, where phones of yesteryear used to have them. And in between the volume keys is actually a virtual assistant key. Yay. And the virtual assistant is, well, it's great. Moving on. Could you use this phone in 2025? Well, you sort of could. It depends on what you actually want to use your phone for. I mean, for writing your memoirs, sure, but with the software being years out of date at this point, battery health being basically in the bin, and the rubber back on this one starting to perish, it's probably just a bit after the end of life for this kind of thing. But I'm sure there are people out there who still use a Passport, so make yourself known in the comments if you still use one of these things. I think regarding the physical keyboard situation, I know there are those out there with a real passion for physical keys, and Michael Fisher's Clicks looks pretty cool. But I think for most people, even working professionals that have to type heaps on their mobile keyboards, the software ones have just become so good, it's not really worth the additional physical real estate that these things take up. The BlackBerry Passport is an utterly fascinating piece of tech history and a brilliant indicator for what was actually going on back in 2014, when Windows Mobile wasn't dead, when there was seemingly room for other players in the space, and a time when companies really pushed the boat out to stand apart from their competition with unique features and form factors.